The wind howled like a wounded animal through the pines, carrying with it a biting cold that clawed at the walls of Alden Vexler's cabin. Snow had piled high along the porch rail, untouched and heavy, muffling the world in a thick silence. It was just past dawn, and Alden stood in his flannel robe, cradling a chipped mug of black coffee, staring at the tree line beyond the clearing. He'd grown used to the stillness since retiring from the force. The isolation didn't bother him much anymore, but something that morning felt off. Then, out of the white haze, a shape emerged, staggering, slow, deliberate. Alden squinted. His breath caught as the figure came into focus. It was Gideon, the same strong build, the familiar amber eyes. His old partner, the German shepherd he hadn't seen in over a year. Alden hadn't known if Gideon was even still alive. But there he was, worn but steady, making his way through the snow. And in his jaws was something small, dark, and motionless. Alden dropped the mug. It shattered against the wood floor as he yanked open the door. Cold air rushed in, slapping him awake. Gideon climbed the steps and stopped in front of him, his breath ragged, snow crusted around his paws and muzzle. He gently laid the tiny body at Alden's feet. A puppy, barely a few weeks old, limp and nearly frozen solid. Alden knelt, heart pounding. The pup wasn't dead, not yet, but she was close. Without thinking, Alden scooped her up and rushed inside. He wrapped her in towels, lit the fireplace, and filled a hot water bottle to press against her small frame. Gideon stood nearby, watching silently, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Alden had no answers. Where had Gideon found her? Why bring her here of all places? The storm was getting worse. Every second counted. The cabin filled with the soft crackling of fire and the shallow, uneven breaths of the puppy. Alden sat beside her, gently rubbing her sides, murmuring reassurances he wasn't sure were meant for her or himself. Gideon, too, lowered himself to the rug, closer now, never taking his eyes off the pup. He was trembling slightly, not from fear. Alden knew that look, but from something deeper. A message, a mission. As the warmth slowly began to return to her tiny body, Alden noticed something peculiar. Her markings, the dark saddle, the pattern around the eyes, they were almost identical to Gideon's. Too similar to ignore. His breath caught again, but this time not from shock, from memory. There was a reason this felt familiar, but the answer lay somewhere buried. In the past, in regrets, in choices Alden had long avoided. And Gideon had just brought it all back to his doorstep. Morning light crept weakly through the frost-covered windows, turning the room into a blur of pale gold and gray. Alden Vexler hadn't slept at all. He sat slouched beside the fire, the puppy wrapped in a blanket on his lap, her breathing steadier now. Gideon rested nearby, eyes half closed, tail twitching faintly every time the pup whimpered. Alden rubbed his temples, his thoughts tangled and restless. The cabin had always been a refuge, a place to forget the noise of his former life. But now, that peace was cracking, and Gideon's sudden return had opened something he'd buried long ago. He looked down at the pup again. Her fur was beginning to dry, her tiny chest rising with fragile determination. Nora, he muttered suddenly. The name had slipped out before he could think about it. A name he hadn't said aloud in years. His late wife had always loved that name, once saying it meant light. The word felt right somehow, a small spark of warmth in a place gone cold for too long. "You'll be Nora," he said softly, brushing the pup's ear with his thumb. Gideon's ears flicked as if he approved. By mid-morning, Alden had called Willa Ashbourne, the town's veterinarian and one of the few people who still checked in on him from time to time. Her voice on the phone carried both surprise and concern when he mentioned Gideon's name. "He found a pup? In this weather? That's impossible, Alden." He told her about the storm, the porch, the filth of half-melted snow on Gideon's coat. She promised to come by as soon as the road was clear enough to drive. Until then, Alden was on his own. He made a bed of blankets near the fire and watched Nora curl up against Gideon's side. The old dog didn't move, just adjusted slightly to keep her close. resting his muzzle across her small body as if to protect her. Alden felt a lump rise in his throat. There was something hauntingly familiar about that image. Something that pulled at memories of late nights in patrol cars, of missions gone wrong, of a bond forged in danger and silence. He reached out and rested a hand on Gideon's neck. "You always knew what to do, didn't you?" As the hours passed, the storm outside grew stronger, the wind rattling the shutters. Alden tried to distract himself by chopping wood, by cleaning, by pretending he wasn't waiting for something or someone. But his mind wouldn't stop replaying the look in Gideon's eyes when he'd first arrived. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, purposeful. Gideon hadn't just stumbled onto that pup. He'd chosen to bring her here. When night fell again, Alden sat back down by the fire, staring at both of them, the old soldier and the newborn. The air was thick with questions, none of which he was ready to face. But deep down, he knew the truth was already moving toward him, one snow-covered step at a time. Willa Ashbourne arrived just after sunrise, her truck tires crunching over the packed snow of Alden's long driveway. She stepped out bundled in a heavy coat and knit scarf, her breath fogging as she approached the cabin with a leather medical bag slung over her shoulder. Alden opened the door before she could knock. "Back here," he said, voice low and tight, leading her toward the hearth where Nora lay nestled against Gideon's side. Willa's eyes widened the moment she saw them. "Well, I'll be. She looks just like him." Kneeling beside the pup, Willa began her exam with careful hands and quiet murmurs. Nora stirred, still weak but responsive. "She's lucky," Willa said after a few minutes. "Severely hypothermic when you found her, but no frostbite. She must have been sheltered somewhere before Gideon brought her here." She paused, turning to Alden. "You said he came straight to your door?" Alden nodded, arms crossed tightly, like he knew exactly where to go. Willa glanced at Gideon, whose eyes remained fixed on her every movement. "That dog has never stopped impressing me," she said softly. Then her brow furrowed. "But where was she before he found her? No tracks nearby. Nothing in the forest." Alden shook his head. "The snow erased everything. It's like she appeared out of nowhere." The words hung in the air a moment too long. Willa resumed her work, but Alden could feel her unease matching his own. After Willa left, promising to return with some supplies and a warmer crate for Nora, Alden stood at the window, watching the faint indentations left by her boots slowly fill with falling snow. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, had placed that pup in Gideon's path. The storm was too fierce, the location too remote. Nothing about it made sense. And Gideon, he was too old to be out in a blizzard. Yet he had braved it for her. Later that afternoon, as the skies briefly cleared, Alden took Gideon outside for a short walk around the cabin. Nora was asleep, tucked in layers of blankets near the fire. The snow crunched under Alden's boots as he followed Gideon around the perimeter of the clearing. Then something caught his eye, faint, half-covered depressions in the snow behind the woodshed. Not paw prints, not boots, small, barefoot impressions, as if a child had walked there alone. A chill deeper than the weather crept through Alden's spine. He followed the trail only a few feet before it vanished under fresh snowfall. But the feeling lingered, a presence or a memory. He looked down at Gideon, who stood alert, ears perked, body tense. "You saw it too, didn't you?" Alden whispered. The wind stirred the trees, but offered no answers. Just the same stillness, the same cold, and the knowledge that something or someone had been watching. That night, the fire burned low, casting long shadows across the cabin walls. Alden sat in his old armchair, staring into the flickering embers while Nora slept in a bundle near his feet. Gideon lay nearby, unmoving but alert, his eyes reflecting the firelight like two amber coals. Alden hadn't told Willa about the footprints. Not yet. He wasn't sure why. Maybe because it sounded crazy. Maybe because deep down, he feared what the explanation might be. A barefoot child in the middle of a blizzard? There was no logic in it, just instinct, and the weight of something unspoken pressing into his chest. He reached for the worn photo on the side table, one he hadn't touched in years. It was faded at the edges, but the image still hurt. Alden, younger, uniformed. Beside him, a woman with bright eyes and a quiet smile, Emily. And between them, a girl with dark curls and a missing front tooth, Unia, his daughter. The memory rushed in without mercy. The night she disappeared had been just like this. A storm, a flurry of confusion, a silence that never broke. Alden stood suddenly, as if walking could outrun the grief. He moved toward the back door, stepping onto the porch, letting the cold slap him awake. The forest beyond the clearing loomed dark and endless. He used to walk those woods with Gideon when the pain became too much. But tonight, even the trees felt like strangers. Still, something in him stirred, that restless pull that came just before the world shifted. As if on cue, Gideon emerged and stood beside him. His ears twitched, nose raised to the wind. Then, without warning, he took off, not running, but pacing steadily toward the tree line, stopping once to look back. Alden hesitated, heart hammering, then followed. The snow crunched beneath their feet as they moved beyond the edge of the clearing, into the hush of the forest. There, under a low-hanging pine, Gideon stopped. Alden saw it instantly. Nestled beneath the branches was a small scrap of fabric, tangled in the needles and dusted with snow. He reached down and lifted it, a child's mitten, pink, torn at the seam, aged by time. His hands began to tremble. This wasn't from today. It looked old, too old. But how had it survived the winters? Who had left it there? And why now? He looked at Gideon, who stood still, watching him with solemn eyes. Alden felt the ground shift beneath him, not physically, but in memory, in time. He clutched the mitten tighter. The snow was falling again, slow and quiet, and in that cold silence, a single thought rang louder than the wind. The past wasn't done with him yet. Alden sat on the edge of his bed, the pink mitten clutched in his weathered hands. The fabric was stiff, faded, but unmistakable. He'd kept the original pair for years, a gift from Unia's 7th Christmas, but this wasn't one of them. This mitten was different, slightly smaller, the threading a little looser, and yet, it carried the same heart-wrenching familiarity. He ran his thumb across the worn seam, his thoughts spiraling. Couldn't be hers. Could it? No child could survive in these woods, not alone, not for years. But nothing about the last few days made sense anymore. Downstairs, Nora whimpered softly in her sleep. Alden rose and walked back into the living room where Gideon sat, ever vigilant beside the fire. The shepherd hadn't taken his eyes off the front door since they returned from the woods, as if expecting someone or something to return. Alden dropped the mitten on the table and crouched beside his old partner. "Where did you find her?" he whispered, voice hoarse. "Where have you been, boy?" Gideon didn't move, but his ears twitched at the sound of Alden's voice. That same look, sorrowful, focused, loyal, burned in his gaze. Alden sighed deeply. Maybe he was going crazy. Maybe grief had finally wrapped itself around his throat and was tightening. But part of him, the part trained to read evidence, to see what others missed, felt it. This wasn't coincidence. It was a message, and he was only starting to understand it. The next morning, he called Harlan Vornhart, the county sheriff and one of the few former colleagues Alden still tolerated. Harlan answered after the second ring, his gravelly voice groggy with sleep. This better be important. Alden didn't waste time. He described the footprints, the mitten, Gideon's return, and the puppy. There was a long pause on the line. Then Harlan's voice came, quieter. "You're not the first one to say they've seen something strange near the woods lately." Alden stiffened. "What do you mean?" Harlan hesitated, then cleared his throat. "Last week, a hunter swore he saw a child standing on the ridge above Coldwater Hollow. Said she vanished before he could get close. A girl in a light dress, barefoot. I chalked it up to exhaustion or whiskey. But now, another silence. Then Harlan added, "I'll come by this afternoon." After the call ended, Alden stared out the window toward the tree line again. The same gnawing feeling returned. that the forest was holding its breath, watching, waiting. He glanced down at Nora, who had awakened and now clumsily padded across the floor toward him. She bumped her head against his leg before curling at his feet. A spark of warmth lit in his chest, but it didn't erase the fear. Something had come back with Gideon, and whatever it wasn't done speaking. Harlan Vornhart arrived just after lunch, his sheriff's SUV rumbling down the snowpacked drive like a tank through silence. He stepped out slowly, one hand tucked inside his coat, the other gripping a thermos. His face, lined and weathered, wore the same skeptical look it had for decades. "You look like hell," he muttered as Alden opened the door. "And you're about to feel worse," Alden replied, motioning him inside. The tension between the two men was old and complicated, stitched together by years of shared silence and half-spoken regrets. Inside, Harlan leaned over the mitten without touching it. "Doesn't look fresh," he said. "But it was just there?" Alden nodded. "Behind the shed, under a pine. No animal tracks. Just that." Harlan grunted. "I've got 30 years in these woods, and not once have I seen a mitten fall from the sky." His voice softened a little. "You think it's connected to Unia?" Alden didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. The question had been gnawing at him every hour since the storm broke. Gideon padded into the room then, stopping beside Harlan. The old dog looked up at the sheriff with eyes filled not just with age, but intent. Harlan raised a brow. "I swear he looks like he knows something." Alden folded his arms. "He does. He brought the pup, led me to the mitten. He's not acting like an old dog out for one last wander. He's on mission." Harlan rubbed his jaw, staring down at Nora, who peered back with wide, intelligent eyes. "You name her yet?" Alden hesitated. "Nora." The name lingered in the air like the last note of a song. Harlan just nodded slowly. The two men stepped out later to survey the area behind the shed. The wind had covered most of the earlier tracks, but Alden pointed to the area where the footprints had been. Harlan crouched, brushed aside a layer of snow, and frowned. "Frozen deeper than the surface snow. Could have been here longer than we thought." Then he glanced up, scanning the woods. "You ever think maybe someone's been living out here?" Alden shook his head. "In this weather? No way. Not without shelter." Still, the idea lingered. That night, Alden couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, a notebook open in his lap, scribbling memories from the week Unia vanished. He wrote down everything. Every detail, every voice on the phone, every lead that went cold. Gideon lay near, his body rigid and alert. Nora stirred occasionally but slept soundly. Outside, the forest groaned under a restless wind. And then a sound. Not a branch snapping. Not wind. A knock. Soft. Deliberate. On the back door. Alden froze. Gideon growled low, ears stiff. Heart pounding. Alden reached for the flashlight and moved slowly toward the kitchen. The doorknob was still. The snow outside untouched. But etched faintly in the frost on the window pane were 5 small fingerprints. Alden stared at the frosted glass, every breath caught in his chest. The 5 small fingerprints on the window weren't smeared or accidental. They were placed, as if someone had reached up slowly and pressed their hand against the pane. Too small to be an adult's. Too perfect to be imagined. The flashlight trembled slightly in his grip. Gideon stood behind him, silent but poised, body low, eyes trained on the door. Alden unlocked it slowly, his fingers stiff with hesitation, and pulled it open into the night. The cold slammed into him, sharp and punishing. The porch lights flickered above as the wind howled through the trees, tossing snow like dust in every direction. Alden stepped outside, shining the beam across the yard. No footprints, no shadows darting between the trees. Just the untouched snow and the breathless silence of a storm preparing to return. Still, the sensation remained that he was being watched, that whoever knocked hadn't truly left. He closed the door and locked it tight, turning to see Nora now sitting up, alert and trembling, her small body tense. Gideon moved to her side protectively, his presence grounding the room again. Alden returned to his chair but didn't sit. He kept pacing. Thoughts swirled. Ghosts of memory clawed at him. What if this wasn't about him losing Unia? What if this was about something he missed back then? Something that had never been finished, something Gideon never stopped searching for. The following morning, Alden drove into town with Gideon in the back seat and Nora bundled beside him. The snowplows had finally cleared the main roads, though the forest roads remained impassable. He parked near Willa Ashbourne's clinic and stepped inside with a heaviness that hadn't left him all night. Willa, noticing his haunted expression, didn't ask. She just nodded toward the back room where he placed Nora gently onto the exam table. "She's stronger," Willa said after checking her over. "Eating well, gaining warmth." Then she paused, noting the tension in Alden's eyes. "But that's not why you came, is it?" He handed her the mitten. "I need to know how old this is, and if you've heard anything. Strange calls, sightings, kids gone missing. Anything." Willa examined the mitten carefully, her face tightening. "This stitching, it's handmade. Older. You might be looking at something that's been out there a long time." Before Alden could respond, the door opened and a young man stepped inside. Tall, wiry, with a leather satchel over his shoulder. "Cashin Laurel," he introduced himself. "Local reporter. Sheriff Vornhart said I should speak with you." Alden narrowed his eyes. "About what?" Cashin unslung the satchel, pulling out an old file folder marked confidential. "About a case from 1997. One that never made the news. About a missing girl." He placed the folder on the table with slow purpose. "And a dog," he added. "That was never." Alden's hands hovered over the folder for a long moment before he finally opened it. Inside were yellow documents, faded photographs, and reports stamped with dates he hadn't seen in years. The first image was unmistakable. A black and white photo of Gideon as a young K9 unit dog, sitting beside a girl with dark curls and a crooked smile. "Unia." His throat tightened. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice sharper than intended. Cashin Laurel didn't flinch. "My uncle was a deputy at the time. He kept copies of old case files the department never followed up on, ones the higher-ups wanted buried. Said this one was different. Said it never made sense, and that the dog kept coming back to the same spot, even after the searches ended." Alden turned the page. There were field notes detailing Gideon's repeated attempts to lead officers toward a specific area in the forest, an area that was never fully investigated due to terrain and weather. Alden could barely breathe as he flipped through report after report. "Why didn't anyone tell me this back then?" Cashin hesitated. "From what I understand, they didn't want to. Too many resources had already been spent. Too many dead ends. The department was under pressure to move on." Alden clenched his jaw. He remembered the tension, the pitying looks, the way conversations ended the moment he walked into a room. Now it all felt like more than just grief. It felt orchestrated. Willa stepped closer, peering at one of the photos. "Wait," she said, pointing to the background of a blurry image. "That tree. That's near Coldwater Hollow." Alden's heart sank. That was near the pine tree where Gideon found the mitten, where the footprints vanished, and where the cold seemed deeper than the snow could explain. "She was trying to lead us back," he whispered. "Even after all this time, she's still out there, or something is." Cashin nodded slowly. "I know how it sounds, Mr. Vexler, but I've spoken to others, hikers, locals, and they've seen things. A small figure near the trees. A child's voice carried on the wind. Even animals avoiding certain areas for no clear reason." The room went quiet. Only the sound of Nora's breathing and the distant crackle of Willa's space heater filled the air. Then Willa broke the silence. "If you're going back out there, you're not going alone." Alden met her gaze. Determined. Fierce. She wasn't asking. Cashin stood straighter. "I'll go too. I've got gear. A drone. Cameras." Alden glanced down at Gideon, who was already standing, tail low, eyes locked on the door as if he'd known all along this moment was coming. Alden exhaled slowly, the weight of 2 decades pressing against his ribs. "Then we go at first light." Because now it wasn't just about closure. It was about truth. and maybe, just maybe, bringing someone home. The forest was cloaked in frost, every branch glinting like glass in the morning light. Alden led the way, his boots crunching through the snow, breath rising in slow clouds. Behind him, Willa carried a heavy pack with medical supplies and extra blankets. Cassian trudged with a camera strapped to his chest and a drone secured to his back. But it was Gideon who walked at the front, nose to the ground, ears perked, tail low, guiding them with unwavering focus. Nora was tucked into Alden's coat, her small body calm, as if she too knew exactly where they were going. Coldwater Hollow loomed ahead, a sunken dip in the forest that had been long forgotten by most. But Alden remembered it. They had searched here once, briefly, during the early days of Unia's disappearance. But the snow had been too deep, and the terrain too treacherous. Now, as they descended into the hollow, a strange quiet settled around them. No wind, no birds. Even the crunch of their boots seemed muffled, like the forest was holding its breath. Cassian launched the drone, sending it hovering above the tree line. Its soft buzzing filled the air as he scanned the live feed through his phone. "There's something up ahead," he said suddenly. "About 30 yards. A structure." Alden's heart jumped. The map said nothing about a cabin in this area. He quickened his pace, Gideon moving faster now, weaving through trees with newfound urgency. They broke through a line of pine and saw it. A small, weathered shack, half sunken into the snow, wrapped in ivy and thyme. Alden approached first, his pulse thundering in his ears. The door hung slightly ajar. He pushed it open slowly, letting the dim light spill into the shadowed interior. The air inside was stale, but not untouched. Blankets were piled in the corner. A tin can sat by a cold fire pit. And on the wall, etched into the wood with shaky hands, were the words, "She waits." Willa stepped in behind him, her voice barely a whisper. Someone was living here. Cassian entered last, camera rolling silently. He moved toward the wall, filming the strange carvings. Then, from the far corner, Gideon growled, low, deep, not in fear, but in warning. Alden turned, heart tightening. Behind a curtain of rags, something shifted. He approached, hand outstretched, and slowly pulled the fabric aside. There, in the shadows, sat a small box, a music box, faded pink, with little stars painted across the top. Alden's breath caught. "This was Unia's," he whispered. He opened it. The melody was broken, tinny, but recognizable. The lullaby Emily used to hum. And tucked inside the lid was a photo. Torn, aged, but clear enough. It was Unia, but not from the past. She looked older, 10, maybe 11. Her eyes tired, yet still bright. "She was here," Alden said, his voice cracking. "She made it this far." Willa gripped his arm gently. "Alden, look outside." He turned, and there, just beyond the tree line, stood a girl, barefoot, silent, watching. Then, in a blink, she was gone. Alden bolted from the shack, snow kicking up behind him as he pushed through the low branches toward the spot where he saw her. "Unia!" he shouted, the name tearing from his throat like a flame after decades of silence. But the clearing was empty. No footprints, no sound, just the thick, frozen stillness of a forest that had swallowed too many truths. Behind him, Willa and Cassian emerged from the shack, both breathless, both watching Alden with wide, uncertain eyes. "I saw her," he said, his voice trembling. "I swear to God, I saw her." Cassian checked the drone footage frantically, scrubbing back through the last few minutes. "There," he said suddenly, turning the screen toward Alden. The image was grainy, shadowed by branches, but clear enough. A figure, small and still, standing just beyond the trees. A girl. "We're not chasing ghosts," Cassian whispered. "Someone's been out here, maybe still is." Alden's hands tightened into fists, not out of fear, but determination. For the first time in years, he believed again. They searched the area for hours. Every tree, every hollowed-out log, every dip in the ground. But there was no sign of a trail, no voice calling back, No footprints fresh enough to follow. As night approached, the cold deepened. Willa insisted they head back before another storm rolled in. "We need to regroup," she said gently. "But this isn't over." Alden nodded, heavy-hearted, and glanced down at Gideon, who had remained quiet, pacing the edges of the clearing like a sentry. He too seemed reluctant to leave. Back at the cabin, the silence felt different. Not oppressive, but open, as if the air itself had changed. Alden sat near the fire, the music box on the table beside him, turning it over in his hands. Willa made tea in the kitchen. Cashin uploaded his footage to a drive, already planning a full report. And Gideon rested near the hearth, with Nora curled into his side, her breathing steady, calm. The old dog had done what he came to do. Later that night, while the others slept, Alden stepped out onto the porch alone. Snow was falling gently now. The storm softened into a quiet hush. He held the photo of Unia, the one from the box, close to his chest. She had survived something, long enough to leave signs, long enough to be remembered. And though he hadn't held her in 20 years, tonight he felt closer to her than ever. "I'll find you," he whispered. "Wherever you are. I won't stop." As he turned to go back inside, something caught his eye near the trees. A glint of light, a reflection. There, hanging from a branch, was the second mitten, untouched, waiting. Alden didn't cry. He didn't shout. He simply stepped forward, hand steady, and took it, not as a goodbye, but as a promise.